Good afternoon, Professor Palmer.
Well, good afternoon.
Hi. Sylbourne Sydial here. If you can recall, we met many moons ago in London in some of our campaign factors.
Yes, I can.
When we were trying to tell this gentleman that who was trying to claim that black people's brain or their DNA is less off than white persons, isn't it?
Yes, I think he was very distinguished, what we call a geneticist, who actually discovered the DNA principles.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not talking about an ordinary scientist. And I was absolutely astonished that he would come out and say that, in fact, black people's produce less efficient work
Mm-hmm.
than, in fact, white people, and that it could be genetic, which is
Wow.
a very serious claim,
Yes.
which, we know is probably is caused by the environment.
Yes. Well. It is good that we actually take him on that time, and I think he's now somewhat in obscurity, if not out of the picture completely.
That's correct. He's not said another word since.
The power of unity and working together.
Correct.
Well, Professor, the new news which came up recently, which I was actually glad about on the New Year, was when I saw that you were awarded, appointed. Well, what is the right phrase? Is it by the Queen? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's a sort of you're nominated, as I understand it, and the nomination committee of the Honours Committee this committee makes a decision, and the decision is to award you whether it's MBE, OBE, CB, or a knighthood, and I was lucky to be, and quite honoured, in fact, to be awarded a knighthood.
Okay, so you are now Sir.
Well, that's what I'm told.
But I've always called you Sir.
Well, my grandson now says, should I call you sir?
Yeah, sir, double times, if anything. But it's a wonderful achievement. We just had recently, what's her name? Stephen Lawrence's mother, Doreen Lawrence.
This as well, yeah, she was made a baronet.
She was made a baroness, and there's also Bill Morris.
Yes, Bill, I know Bill well.
As well. So I believe that what is really even so fundamental is the fact that as a people, even not saying just Jamaican, as a people, we're actually moving and breaking through barriers, if anything. Would you say so, sir? Or is it a little too late, or is it going through? What would you say?
I think that, and it's very important that you did start with, Professor Watson, because there is still this debate, and black people should be aware of it. There is still this debate as to whether, because, say, black kids, just like some Bangladeshi children or whether they're Irish children, do perform worse than, say, other children. And people are looking around, and they've always been trying to do this, is to try, especially with black people, to say it's genetic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you know what that means? If somebody says that something is genetic, it means, therefore, it cannot be changed.
Yes.
And therefore, you shouldn't be wasting money on it.
Yes.
So therefore, if they were to prove that somebody is genetically different, then you're going to get different treatment, and this treatment is going to be less effective, and therefore you are in a whole lot of trouble. We know that human beings are, as I said in my book, I said we're different but the same.
Yes. Do you recall recently Mayor Boris Johnson mentioned that people have different IQs, so therefore let's get real. I think that was something of the nature of what he said.
I didn't hear that.
I'm not too. Yeah, something of that region there, and so therefore there's this sort of thinking out there that it was along the lines of not everybody's equal. Yes, I think that was it.
Yes, I would have to see exactly the phrase, but if it's trying implying that people are different and they deserve different treatment
Yes.
because they are inherently different,
Yes.
then that is dangerous nonsense.
And again, it wasn't alluding according to, i.e., race. It was people per se. So therefore, let's get real. If you're of a level, don't try to or seek to go there. There's only a level which will be of the ruling class, a level which is going to be of the working class. So therefore, so some people might look at it and say, well, hang on a second, it doesn't make sense that I try to push any further, is it?
Right. Oh no, we don't want to get that sort of nonsense out in public, and anybody who says that, because if you look at the evidence that when I first came to London in 1955, you had secondary modern schools.
Yes.
And these secondary modern schools were just organizations that held people for a few years and put you on the street to clean it.
Yes.
You know, and the point is that the secondary modern school was developed by a man called Sylbourne, a psychologist, in the early 1900s. Now, Sylbourne made up his results. He actually, we found out subsequently, he didn't have the evidence. He made up the results that the white working class are less intelligent than the white middle class. And that was the basis of the school divisions, grammar school and secondary modern schools.
Yes, yes.
Which I went to a secondary mod. Now, they've now found, since he made up his results, that these divisions are artificial. If you come from a poor area, you do less well on intelligence tests.
Yes.
Because they're designed for middle-class white people.
Yes, yes, yes.
You see what I mean? So there is a certain Eurocentricity about these tests. And you cannot judge, poor white people against rich white people. And you cannot judge people from different cultures with those tests to find out whether they are intelligent or not.
So therefore...
the argument is a scientific base, and therefore it is very dangerous when people try to summarize it.
Right. So therefore, one would tend to allude that depending on your agenda and what you want to find at the end result, you will tailor your research accordingly.
Well, this is what Sylbourne did.
Yes.
And that's a very good example that we must not do that again. And a lot of people don't know about Sylbourne. But he was the cause of a lot of white people ending up cleaning the streets.
Yes.
And that's why in the end they got rid of the secondary modern schools and they put in the comprehensives.
Yes.
And a lot of the people now who were regarded as quite ineducable have done quite well in one generation.
Yes.
I mean, my mother, who could be regarded when she came in 48, if she was given a test, as being educationally subnormal, I was given a test in 55.
Yes.
And showed that I was educationally subnormal.
And now going back to 1940, when you were born in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica.
Yeah.
Give me a little synopsis of your journey to Jamaica. Were you on the Windrush?
No, my Windrush was 1948, wasn't it?
Yes.
Right. When my mother came in 48.
Okay, that's what I was looking at. Yes.
The Ascania.
Uh-huh.
And the Ascania, I don't know who owned the Windrush, but the Ascania was owned by the Cunard Line, so all their ships had IA at the end.
Yes.
So my mother came on the Ascania in 48, and so the Windrush may have been a few months before that. And I came in 55 on the Mauritania.
Yes.
So, no, I wasn't here in 48, but my mother was.
But you came on your own, I can figure, yes?
Yes, I did. In Jamaica, I'd only traveled on Sunday school picnics out of Kingston. I didn't travel much, but then I traveled 5,000 miles on my own. Uh-huh. I took a plane from Kingston to New York and then got on a boat at New York and came to Liverpool. And most of my white colleagues and friends says, "How the hell could you do that?" And I said, "There you are. You see, I'm supposed to be educationally subnormal."
Well, you see, what is very interesting with that trip that you took is what is actually about to be happening very soon because my organization and myself, we have launched a lobby to boycott Virgin and BA if they do not play ball with us. And what persons are actually even doing now is using these alternative routes via New York back to Jamaica.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, we may need to resurrect the Windrush, Professor Professor Palmer. To show that I'm sure it wasn't British Airways or Virgin you came with, to New York, is it? You didn't go on those plane, did you?
No,
Just
I
kidding.
came on a propeller job from Jamaica to New York,
Yeah.
and then I took the boat.
Okay.
But I fully understand what you're saying, that, I do some work with the Scottish Parliament, and it's one of our committees, and if we were made aware that of this, unfairness in terms of the fares one paid, depending on which part of the world one lived in.
Yes.
And what it now turns out is that some of the people in the poorest part of the world are paying the largest fares. And that seems to me quite wrong.
And that is the airport passenger duty tax, which I also sit
Correct.
on a committee appointed by the Jamaican High Commissioner. It is really unfair, and it is something I'm going to tap on near to the end regarding the APD, as to where we're going as a nation, as a community.
Okay.
But a little bit more about your journey in the UK, and because what sometimes we are seeing a lot is whereby Jamaicans or persons who are born from overseas come to the UK and they make headway sometimes a bit more than the people who are born here or Jamaicans or black people here. What have you got to say about that based on your journey and your observation?
I think that, it's like, if you're familiar with something, when I was writing in the 60s about, the black children's experience, and a lot of the stuff I wrote in the 60s, I see being written again in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote articles about Handsworth, Birmingham, Tottenham,
Yes.
and those were where we had the riots again, many, many years later. So what you're really saying is that kids who were born here got the same problems as the kids which we hear in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems crazy because the kids in the 60s were born in Jamaica.
Yes.
And I think that one of the reasons for that is that it's like poor white kids. The poor white kids live in, certain areas, and they don't have any idea of how to access the system. And that is very important.
Yes.
If your education, whether it's in Jamaica or Bangladesh or whatever, teaches you how to access the system, then when you come to this country, you are able to do it.
Yes.
If you're brought up in Tottenham, Brixton, Handsworth, or Moss Side in Birmingham, in Manchester, or whatever, then you are brought up in a circumstance where you don't know how to access the system. In fact, you're not system conscious.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And therefore, that to me plays a very big part in limiting the ability of children who are brought up in deprived areas to get equal rights in the community.
Yes.
And somehow we can either do it, and what you then don't get is what we call social mobility.
Yes.
And the government, whether they're Conservative government or Labour governments, have talked about that. What you get when people don't understand the system, don't know how to access the system, you get a lack in social mobility.
And what you said is very interesting there because I sat on a committee looking at the census and as to why black persons, actually it was more targeting young black men, do not do the census. And looking at the wordings as to see is there a negative factor to it. But what I learned from that is if the census doesn't pinpoint certain communities or certain people, allocation of funds do not go there.
Yes.
And it is something that, which you talk about the education, we don't know these things unless that we are told.
Yes, that's right. And somehow, what we've got to do is somebody, I do the same with alcohol. People ask me about alcohol and the impact of it.
Are you intimately involved with alcohol? Sorry, I'm just kidding.
Alcohol, in terms of minimum pricing.
Yes, I'm just teasing.
Because it's very important that, because the Scottish government has actually made it a law about minimum price, where the government in London has dropped it. And people say it's related to liver disease.
Yes.
Okay? And when I look at the figures, what I found, and which was ignored, was that you can't relate it directly to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, there are other factors involved. And now there are publications saying poor people who live in poor areas are 5 times more likely to get liver disease drinking the same amount of alcohol as rich people. And therefore, if you live in a deprived area, there are multiple factors that influence not only your health, but also your education. And to blame one aspect, whether it's alcohol or drugs or violence,
yes,
and say these are the things that limit these areas. Get rid of drugs, alcohol, or violence, and these kids will be professors. Of course, you can't get rid of them.
Yes.
So it's really making a condition, making an excuse to do nothing.
Right.
See my point?
I can see very, very clearly where you're going with that. So therefore, a lot of what we need to do is actually the whole education process, which is so crucial.
We need a social change in those areas. That means education. That means attitude change. All these things, and attitude change comes with education.
I'm actually listening to you, and I'm actually wanting to move swiftly on into another area, because as I listen to yourself and I look at also some of the background, I did look at research whereby you're one of those persons who highlight some of the old slave trade factor, which sometimes seems to be overlooked many times. And today in the UK, okay, you're in Scotland there, but you're intimately with the UK, because I know you're the chief of Scotland, Mr. Salmon, want to take you guys away. That's another thing there. But within the UK and post the riots, which was in London, there are many persons that talk about that London or the UK is on a time bomb. There are some people who say that based on the recession, based on the cuts, and at the same time, you've got another sector who is actually going through. You're seeing persons moving forward, young people moving forward with SMEs and with these new companies, new starters going on, and then another sector which is saying it's getting bad. How do you look at that, sir?
You always have the prophets of doom. And, we had, Powell in the 60s talking about rivers of blood.
Yes.
That, we'll all be killing each other and the Thames will be full of blood within, 5 years or whatever time period he gave.
Yes.
Now, the black immigration has gone down and now we have white immigration.
Yes. Starting today.
The irony is I'm asked by the white groups to come and speak on their behalf. So what we have is that the black immigration is over and we have certain problems. We have white people coming in and we're told they're educated, so they're not going to be on the benefit system. The problem is there is no doom imminent. There never is.
Yes.
What we have is a situation, as I said before, and it has to be faced. It is no point finding excuses for it. You know, new policies, new phrases, new whatever. It's very simple.
Yes.
If you live in deprived areas, you're going to do less educationally, you're going to have less mobility, and those circumstances, social circumstances in deprived areas, you've got to change them.
Yes. Yes.
And there is going to be no rivers of blood.
Yes.
But they're going to be discontent, and it's pointless insulting these people by saying that they've got lower intelligence. There's no evidence for it.
Right, right. So
no evidence. But it costs money. And if you start spending money on deprived people, the wealthier people start complaining.
And that
sociological theory.
And that points also to the same APD, because I tell you what I say to persons sometimes, why sometimes I believe the airport passenger duty tax is not getting a certain momentum, is that the persons who are actually going to benefit will be the minority.
Yes. Oh, yes. And that is that social theory is that anything that the majority perceives to benefit the minority, they vote against it.
Exactly. So therefore,
it's good government.
Yes. So therefore the angle.
Look after the minority.
Yes. So therefore the angle is, and this is something which I push because I was on the Operation Black Vote scheme and support Simon Woolley and his work, is about getting the black community, ethnic community, to be politically sensitized and sensitive to the movement, because seeing the work that you're doing, seeing the work that Bill Morris, seeing the work that Doreen Lawrence is doing, it's a radical approach, but actually entwined with the political system to make that change.
It is. In fact, for example, the East End, was quite a dangerous place to live at one time. In the 50s. And it has been radically remodeled, socially. And now you get the middle class people moving in the East End. So was Highbury.
Look at Brixton.
When I lived at Bright Street,
yes,
just in the Caledonian Road area, it was a pretty dangerous area to live. Caledonian Road was tricky. I mean, I was always terrified when I walked down there. Now I go back to those areas, I couldn't afford to buy a house now in parts of Highbury. Whereas before, you could get a house there for £200.
And is that a bit like Brixton now?
Well, yes, I know Brixton less well, coming from the north of London. We never used to venture much around there. But, you're probably quite right. And I know for council estates that both in Scotland and England, that if they pull down a 12-story high building and put 2-story high buildings, you change the whole attitude of the people.
Yes. Yes.
And what it therefore, Sylvan, requires is money. And it is no point, people like, if it's Boris Johnson, as they said that, trying to find excuses to solve conscience. Watson, don't worry about black people, they're genetically different, so you don't need to spend a penny on them. Don't worry about people from deprived areas, they're lower intelligence. And therefore, our conscience is clear. What can we do if it's genetic?
Yes.
That is not, it is dishonest, it's not true, and in fact it won't work.
Well, good. So now, sir, in regards to the knighthood,
right?
What happens now? I think you're now on another journey.
Lots of phone calls, and I get lots of emails. I'm just going to go on doing what I did. What I did in Scotland was to do, and it at the beginning.
Yes.
I started to look at Scottish Caribbean history.
Yes.
And it is now in the Scottish curriculum of excellence.
Okay.
In the history curriculum. Because the white historians did nothing. They wrote about a history mainly in terms of abolitionists.
Right.
They didn't write about the great Scottish families or English families which benefited and who still run the system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I talk about. And the ordinary Scottish people, white people, are absolutely horrified that nobody told them about that.
Wow.
Nobody told them that this building over there, or that building over there, or Henry Dundas, Lord Melville standing up in the centre of Edinburgh,
Mm-hmm.
actually sent out troops to defeat the Maroons and then transported them to Nova Scotia.
And did you get any opposition when you were on your quest and
No.
your research and pronouncing these findings?
No. In fact, the Scottish people, I wrote an article and bits were taken from it for the Evening News in Edinburgh about a month ago. And the journalist who wrote it, and one of, say, a features writer for the Herald, when she said she read what I'd written, and because she knows Glasgow well, she didn't know Jamaica Street was built in 1763.
Wow.
The trade with Jamaica.
A street in Scotland?
Yeah.
Wow.
In Glasgow.
I never knew that before. I just know that now.
Well, that's right.
Mm.
The trade with Jamaica. The Gallery of Modern Art, which is one of the largest buildings in the middle of Glasgow. It's a big neoclassical building. That's a Jamaica slave master's house.
You mean the one which control what's going on in Jamaica?
Yeah, no, the one in Glasgow.
Yes.
The Gallery of Modern Art, built in the middle of Glasgow,
Yes.
is William Cunningham's house, and his slave plantation was in Westmoreland.
Okay.
That was his house.
So therefore, when we hear of Jamaicans sometimes and they talk about their Scottish roots and this Scottish heritage based on the intermingling, these are some of the factors there that links that, isn't it?
Oh yes, and in fact, you can have great discoveries, and I've worked in research, and I've done a little bit on that, where you're looking at science. But I will now put it down to one of the best observations I had, which is obvious and a child could have seen it. All great discoveries, when you explain them to people, everybody could say, I could do that.
Yes.
Historians were saying there was no link, the links were tenuous, and that's what we're told. I wrote to one of my friends in Jamaica and got the Jamaica telephone book.
Yes.
And when you look at the Jamaica telephone book, about 70% of the names in there are Scottish.
Wow. Wow. Now that is...
Most of us have got Scottish surnames, or we have relatives who have.
Wow.
All of us in Jamaica.
Mm.
So there are more Campbells, believe you me. I've counted them.
Well, my wife is Campbell. My wife, her name is Campbell.
Yeah, there are more Campbells in the telephone book, of Jamaica telephone book, than there are in the telephone book of Edinburgh and all the surrounding areas.
Wow. Wow.
There are 2,500 Campbells in the Jamaica telephone book.
That's very interesting. That's very
And the
interesting.
first Campbell that arrived in Jamaica in 1695, okay, arrived from Scotland, and the Campbells have been there ever since. We know the first Campbell that was in Jamaica was a Scot, and they're from the west of Scotland. So your wife can go to the west of Scotland. The Duke of Argyll is a Campbell.
Okay. Okay.
So once you tell people that, historians were in trouble because the telephone book, I have got a good telephone book and I show it to them. And all the Scottish people after my lecture come up looking for their names.
So the key thing again is knowledge is power.
That is the point. And the point is that it took a Jamaican who was trying to make a point, looking for the evidence to support that point. Without that telephone book, I'd be struggling.
Wow. Wow.
And therefore, you tell the kids, it is that simple. That's what knowledge is about. That's what power is about.
Well,
Not to support your case.
Well, Professor, I'm not going to keep it too long because I know you got many things to do. But one thing I just want to bring in before we go is my organization, Facilitators for Better Jamaica. You know, when we met some long time ago, and when we sat with Errol Walters back then with a different campaign in the UK. We have gone 10 years now, and we lobbied the UK government at the time when Jamaican teachers, well, Commonwealth teachers, were having a fight with their qualified teacher status.
Of course,
Yes,
I remember that.
and we were successful in partnership with all the different groups, NUT, Black Londoners Forum, where Errol Walters with,
You
and
need to work together.
exactly we were, and that is one of the things we strategically do. Now, what is happening now? We have launched a campaign called Community Against Exorbitant Plane Fares.
Right.
And this is Virgin and BA, because we have actually still have the APD there, but this is more complementary because the APD deals with the political aspect. What we're doing is actually approaching the airlines by itself. But how we're doing it this time, sir, is doing it more strategically, where we're engaging with the communities. We're going around the UK having consultation.
Okay.
Because if we can pull the community with us, and everybody's saying this is what they want a better fare, they want to get their baggage allowance, or they will boycott, or we look for alternative routes, like what you did. You showed us that you came to the UK on a plane to New York and a boat. So
when I got to, I think it was Newfoundland.
yes.
I thought I'd arrived at Liverpool. I didn't know how far it was.
Yes, yes. So where we are now, we're now at 15,000 signatures, and but just want to hear your view on that, because this why I'm bringing it up, because each step of the way as we're doing this, we tend to listen to what people are saying, because it's very important that we come together united, and what we're finding is that the disparity and the discrimination against the black countries in regards to this, we're finding it very profound. What's your view on that, sir?
Is this about the fares?
The airfares, yes. The airfares, yes.
And this discrimination in terms of, well, as I said at the beginning, that I think that anything that, what the definition is that which, in fact, which is disproportionate. That's the word. If something is disproportionate and it cannot be justified, then it's discriminatory.
Yes, yes.
That's it. Those are the rules.
Yes.
And if it's disproportionate and it cannot be justified, so you say to Virgin, we think it is discriminatory. It is disproportionate and we want you to justify it.
Yes.
And if they can't, then you say, then you go for them on the basis that they cannot justify it, thus it's discriminatory and it must be changed.
And as we would say sometime, end off.
That is the end of the argument. You keep going at them, say, you justify this.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because if you cannot justify something, it's anti-human.
Yes, yes, yes.
You see what I mean?
Now, it is very serious, and I do appreciate the time that you took out of your schedule.
If
and
you know your argument and you're writing just one sentence,
yes,
it works. You write 5 pages, doesn't work.
Yes.
So seek out what you've got to say, find the right words, and the right word for the slums is changing of attitudes.
Changing of attitudes.
That's it. Because once attitudes change, then people will change themselves.
And you know what is very funny? Once the people know, just like in Scotland, when people start to know certain things, it makes a big difference. We'll be surprised at the same time how much...
One thing, they'll be negative.
Yes.
When you start telling this history.
Yes.
They are negative if you say you were involved in slavery and you killed hundreds of thousands of people. That attitude is negative. If you say to them, John Bloggs up the road, Lord whatnot, or Mr. So-and-so, had his plantations in Jamaica, and that building, he built it with that money, they don't find that acceptable.
Yes.
It's the way you teach history.
Yes.
That bring people. And I've got 3 people on my computer. The ex-deputy chief constable.
Yes.
a young Scottish guy doing his PhD on Scottish Jamaica history, and somebody else, just an ordinary person. They're all going to Jamaica for their holiday.
Yes.
Because they now feel an affinity with the country.
Wow. Wow. That's
you know what I mean?
that's very interesting, Professor. Well,
okay.
Well, Professor, I want to thank you.
Right. I see my wife is hovering about.
Yes. Please wish her a Happy New Year. Don't tell her it was myself doing the interview, because I don't want to miss out on my invitation in the future.
She knows him. He stayed in the house.
So thank you very much for this time, sir, and I wish you all the best. And we'll be coming back to you again.
Anything I can do, as they say in Jamaica, you know where I live.
And we say, yeah, man.
Okay then.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Happy New Year to you and your family.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye.